Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Dan and Joe Sports Show. As always, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joe.
And Joe, I'm excited. We have our special draft day preview show today. We're 2 days away from this year's draft, which, I got to say, I'm excited about the draft, but it may be one of the more underwhelming drafts from a talent standpoint that we've seen in a long time. I mean, in my mind, it's the weakest quarterback class that we've seen, the weakest running back class we've seen. The offensive line class isn't that strong. Really, the meat and potatoes of this class is receivers and defensive linemen, and that's really it. I think that's the strength of this class, and really in the other positions, it's pretty much lacking.
Yeah, that's very well the case, Dan. It reminds me a lot of the 2013 draft class where it was very, questionable quarterback-wise, and E.J. Manuel was the first quarterback selected, which was basically an overreach by the Bills in the first round. And to your point, it's very wide receiver heavy. And what we've seen over the last few weeks is all these trades and big contracts for receivers. And so teams are obviously putting a premium on that position with, how players like, Jamar Chase have impacted the Bengals and, skyrocketed them to contention basically in year one of his career. And so I think you could see as many as 6 to 8 receivers go in the first round Thursday.
I think so too, Joe. I mean, it seems like the classes of receivers have gotten better and better. I mean, 2 years ago, we were talking about what an outstanding wide receiver class. Last year was like, man, could it possibly be any better than this? And then this year, it is better. And in fact, it's a lot better than what we've seen even in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, absolutely. A lot of guys there. But I think a draft class also or always feels kind of hollow where you don't have great quarterbacks in it.
And that's the case. I mean, Joe, I was talking with friend of the show, Spencer, earlier, who we've had on here a couple times. And he and I were talking about the fact that some of these quarterbacks that you're going to see go in the first round, be it Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, and we're fair, Matt Corral, are guys who in a lot of years would be third, fourth, maybe even fifth round draft picks, in all honesty.
Yes, they're only first rounders potentially this year because teams are desperate to draft a quarterback.
Absolutely. And that's what we're looking at right now. And so there's going to be people reaching for quarterbacks like they always do, but maybe not as much as you would generally see.
Yeah, I could see maybe us going 10 picks without a quarterback taken at least, but it kind of depends on what the Panthers do in the top 10. Like they're probably the most likely top 10 team to draft a quarterback.
That's right. The Panthers, they've had a rough couple years at the quarterback position. They got rid of Cam Newton. They made that trade for Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater ended up showing that really it was the fact that he just had a great defense in New Orleans that led him to have that really successful middle of the year run where he filled in for Drew Brees. And that maybe Teddy B just never recovered from that injury that he had with the Vikings and never really was the same again. And then, of course, he fizzles out. They bring back Cam Newton after a year of him. They bring back Cam Newton because Sam Darnold gets injured after they made this great trade for Sam Darnold. And then Cam ends up showing his age and maybe coming to wear that he's had from a career where, to be frank, he wasn't treated the same way as other quarterbacks by officials and not protected. And suddenly you're looking at a team that could be looking at their fifth starting quarterback in 2 seasons. I mean, because what? You had Cam, you had Sam Darnold, you had Teddy Bridgewater, PJ Walker. I mean, so yeah, you'd be looking at number 5 right now. And so I think there's a chance that they could go quarterback, but maybe if you're them, like, why don't you try to invest and get some more weapons, I think, before you go quarterback?
Yes, because there's plenty of playmakers, like we talked about with receiver in this draft, and you can definitely get a great offensive lineman, I think, in this class as well.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, why don't we do this? Let's go team by team in the top 32. And I've got a mock draft from SI.com, and we'll see what this guy says and say whether we agree or disagree. And,
Okay.
just kind of look at what the team's needs are. And I can go and tell you, Joe, that I disagree with a lot of what this guy says vehemently. But let's look at it and we can kind of compare our notes. Joe, the first one we have is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And of course, this is a team we could even trade. But for purposes of our analysis today, we're not doing any trade talk. We're doing just like straight on the line. The number one overall draft pick has changed a lot the last few weeks. For a while there, it's Aiden Hutchinson. That's the guy. It's going to be him. And, there's other times people have been talking about Evan Neal, the offensive tackle from Alabama. That's who it's going to be. I mean, what a freak of nature, amazing athlete. And then all of a sudden, Joe, in this last week, Travon Walker out of Georgia has come out of nowhere. And suddenly he is the odds-on favorite in Vegas. And not like a landslide. It's not like what we saw with Trevor Lawrence or what we've seen with a lot of these other quarterbacks and, big-time players the last few years. But he's a substantial favorite. Not going to be a shocker by any means if the Jaguars go with someone else, but that is the guy that right now is listed as the number one player on the board. So, Joe, with that being said, SI picks Travon Walker going to the Jags. Is that the way that you think they go?
That's not the way I would go. I would go offensive line. I think you got to protect Trevor Lawrence, who's a guy that has a lot of potential and he needs to, stay upright to be successful. And I think they should go offensive line with this pick.
Joe, this guy lists Travon Walker as the pick. I also think you just spent all this money getting Trevor Lawrence. You made him the number one guy. He's the face of your program. Things didn't work out the way that we thought they were going to work out with Urban Meyer. Not by a long shot. You have to protect your main investment. Mm-hmm. Trevor Lawrence looked like a rookie last year. And not that he only looked like a rookie. He looked like a rookie that had bad talent and bad protection. And, there were some things that he did that, I'm sure a lot of people are saying, look, T-Law isn't what we thought he was. Well, you got to give him the opportunity to be who you think he is. So I think offensive tackle is the best thing they could do. And, Joe, if I were them, I would get Evan Neal out of Alabama. It hurts me to say these words coming out of my mouth that I think an Alabama player should be drafted number one overall, especially because, Joe, out of the entire pantheon of things that Nick Saban has done, this is the one thing that he has not done at Alabama is he has never had a number one overall draft pick there yet. So this is literally the last thing that Lord Saban could check off the list of things he hasn't accomplished is this. And me, as the most ardent Auburn fan in the world, is telling you that this is what the Jags should do is go out and get Evan Neal. The guy is an amazing athlete. We're talking about a guy that's like 6'8". He's 350. He runs under a 5.0. He can do a standing backflip. And I mean, the physical prowess of this guy is unmatched. And this is what you need to protect someone like Trevor Lawrence. So I think that they should go Evan Neal.
And you wouldn't be sorry either. The other guys you could argue at some point might have bigger upside, but you're not going to be sorry 10 years from now if you draft Evan Neal. In my opinion, you've got somebody that can start from day one.
Absolutely, yeah. You're not going to be upset. There's not going to be any issue with it. Like, did you not get a guy that's going to get 18 and a half sacks in a season? Yeah, you're not. But did you protect your own number one investment? Yes, you did. No matter what the case, if you got Evan Neal, that's what would happen.
Right.
So I think we're in agreement on that one. And number two, Joe, the Detroit Lions. This is a team that a lot of weaknesses. I mean, they got needs all over the board. And I told you earlier that Aiden Hutchinson was someone who, for the longest time, he ended up getting second in a Heisman Trophy race that wasn't close, but he was listed as the number one guy off the board for a while. Travon Walker kind of snuck up and took that from him. This website has Aiden Hutchinson going to the Detroit Lions. And, that's I like Hutchinson a lot, but my question is, with all the things that the Lions need, is a defensive end really the best thing they could have? Because didn't they fire Matt Patricia? It'd be one thing in my mind if they had retained Matt Patricia and added someone who's a gifted defensive player like Aiden Hutchinson. But when you're going away from someone that is that solid of a defensive coach, this pick doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
They've got Dan Campbell, who was the Saints special teams coordinator. He's their head coach. I don't like this pick either, Dan. I do think it's going to happen, definitely. Everything to me just kind of circles back to the Lions, wanting the in-state hero and Hutchinson from Michigan, kind of the story there. It reminds me a lot of Lonzo Ball in the NBA coming out of UCLA, drafted number 2 by the Lakers a few years ago. It just feels like they want it to happen. But kind of like that, I just don't think it's going to work out that well. I have some questions, but maybe Hutchinson proves me wrong. But, going back to what you said, I think that the Lions have other areas they could address. And to me, with the exception of Stafford and Calvin Johnson, over the last couple of decades, they've just been historically pretty bad at drafting. Like especially a couple of years ago, they drafted Jeff Okudah with like the number 4 pick, which is a great, talented cornerback, but he's been injured some. And I just don't think cornerback is where you go in the top 5 with a pick like that. And so to me, the Lions have just historically made a lot of questionable picks.
Yeah, Joe, and this is one that would be a pick from the heart. This is the guy who was the hero of Michigan football last year. He saved Jim Harbaugh's job. He beat Ohio State. He got there in the reins to possibly win a Heisman Trophy. His dad played at Michigan. This is a play when you have a poor team, but you want to sell some tickets. And I get that. I mean, I do. And so maybe if you decide in your mind we're the Lions and we're always going to suck, then why not take this pick? I guess at least, it'll help you with selling tickets and it'll help you with getting more people to view your games. But I think that there's a lot of other areas of need that they could address first. I think wide receiver is something they need. They need some offensive linemen because we know that their quarterback is not exactly the most mobile of quarterbacks. Of course, the one that went from the Rams over to them. And they need some receivers. They need receivers. I think running back is something they could probably address. I feel like the running back from Georgia that they have hasn't turned out to be quite as good as we thought he would be in the NFL. And so these are all things that you could think about. But I think Aiden Hutchinson may be good for your bottom line, but it's not going to be good for your win-loss total.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's other players to me that have a better upside and more of a sure thing that they could get here.
All right, Joe, number 3, the Houston Texans are picking. And here they're listed as getting the other offensive lineman that's very highly regarded, Evan Neal. It's definitely been kind of a back and forth as to who's the better tackle. And this is I'm gonna go with this, Joe. I'm sure I'm completely off on how you pronounce this. Ike Ekwonu from NC State, and he's getting a lot of high marks. The Texans, I usually like going offensive tackle here. I talked about how much I thought the Jaguars needed Evan Neal. The only issue I see with this one, Joe, is do you care about it that much when your quarterback is Davis Mills? You don't have Deshaun Watson anymore. I mean, do we really see Davis Mills being a guy that's going to be a long-term starter in the NFL? I mean, no. I think that you might be better served to get some more talent on your team for what's inevitably going to be a quarterback you probably go and get next year or the year after that.
I'm okay with it. I prefer Neal to this offensive lineman specifically, but I don't think it's you can go completely wrong because I think, any of these top 10 offensive line talents or even usually first round offensive line talents are usually consistently pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like it's hard, to miss those. Like you don't hear about many people whiffing on offensive linemen of this caliber. And if I'm the Texans, to me, this is a good foundational piece where if Mills is not your quarterback next year, you can bring in who you like. And it kind of also shows that the Texans are not doing what we're afraid some other teams are going to do, and kind of overreach in this draft class too.
That's true. This would be a safe pick. I would give him a B+ on this pick if that's the way they went. We know Ekwonu is very talented. And you're right, even if Davis Mills is not the guy of the future, it never hurts to have a strong left tackle that can prepare whoever's going to be your quarterback.
Right.
All right, Joe. The next one that we have at number 4 are the Jets. And this is one that I really have a problem with. He has Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati, being picked by the Jets. Joe, the Jets are a team that I know that their coach, Staley, I saw him speak at the Senior Bowl. Really good, hard-nosed defensive coach. Of course, he likes defensive players, but the Jets were pathetic on offense last year. I mean, like what we saw with Wilson, there were games he threw 7 interceptions. I mean, barely even looked like a starting quarterback in the NFL. That guy needs help all over the board, offensive line, running back, wide receivers. How dare you go defense in the very first pick if you're the Jets, if this is actually what happens?
Well, I referenced earlier the Jeff Okudah pick a couple of years ago by the Lions. It reminds me a lot of that. That was also 4th overall. And I've never been a proponent of drafting a defensive back in the top 10. To me, if you're drafting in the top 10, then your team has a lot more troubles foundationally than the defensive secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to address the line on both sides before you even look at this.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. I mean, this is definitely one where when I look at what happened with Wilson out of BYU in his first season, I would even maybe consider trading up to get an Evan Neal or to get this Ekwonu to protect him, because he looked completely out of sorts. He didn't have a lot of time to throw the ball. And I think O-line is definitely the way you go right here. If not, maybe trade back to get a wide receiver, because there's not a lot of talent there either.
Yeah, I mean, and just how is a defensive back going to catapult your team, to that many additional wins? Whereas like a great offensive lineman or even a pass rusher, they can really make an impact.
Or a linebacker. I think a linebacker is someone else that is going to really make a difference if you have that many problems. But Joe, even your best cornerbacks, your Marcus Lattimore's, your Islands, like, what we saw Richard Sherman back in the day, they're not going to take you if you're someone as bad as the Jets to be in a playoff team.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
They might add a win or two to you, maybe, but they're not a player that's that a great need to where you need to go in the top 5 to get them.
Right, exactly.
All right, Joe, the next one we have at number 5, we have the New York Giants sticking with our philosophy and taking offensive tackle Charles Cross out of Mississippi State.
I mean, I like the offensive line standpoint. I'm not big on Charles Cross.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss, Sam Williams, who has first-round talent that's probably going to fall in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He beat Charles Cross consistently that night, getting pressure to the quarterback. And so I'm just not sold on Cross. I think he's a little bit overrated. I would prefer him probably in the 20s, 15s, 20 pick. I don't think he's, in my opinion, good enough to be at number 5.
Yeah, Joe, I've been very interested by seeing how inflated Charles Cross has been in all these evaluations, because you're right. I mean, I saw him get beat consistently by Ole Miss when they played him. I saw in the first half of the Auburn game him get just demolished by what wasn't a great defensive line by Auburn by any means. Alabama, was able to do whatever they wanted to against him. And so when you saw him take on the best defensive lines in the SEC, I mean, outside of, I guess, having a good game against Texas A&M, not really a whole lot that we saw there that, in my mind, justifies a top 5 pick at the left tackle.
Does this particular mock draft have him as the 3rd offensive lineman or the 2nd?
This would be the 3rd. Well, actually, no, he'd be the 2nd in this one, because Ekwonu is number 1. This guy actually has him ranked ahead of Evan Neal, which to me is madness.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. That is stunning.
Yeah, I told you that I highly disagree with this guy. I'm not even going to say your name on this show because I disagree with you so much. I'm not saying I think you're stupid or that I think you're wrong. Well, actually, I'm saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're stupid. Obviously, this is what you do for a living, but man, you're way off.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, Joe. The next one that I have at number 6, we have Carolina Panthers. And here they have them taking Evan Neal out of Alabama, which, Joe, if Evan Neal fell to 6, that would be a gift from the heavens to take him at that. And I would give that pick an A++ if that were to actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take him immediately. The only reason I might pause for a few minutes on the clock is to see if anybody gives me a phone call wanting to trade up, getting excited about Evan Neal being available.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the only thing, is if you realize, well, wait, Evan Neal is here. We have a lot of problems with the Panthers. Maybe let's see if they'll give us a couple first-round picks later on the line to take him, and that would be the only reason you wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All right, Joe. At number 7, after the Panthers, the New York Giants. This guy, I guess the New York Giants made a trade with the Bears to go off. And this is a guy that they have listed that a lot of people loved, and probably for the last 2 years before this year, we thought he was going to be the number 1 overall draft pick. He's someone that is not very popular in the state of Alabama, actually extremely unpopular with Alabama fans, with the University of Alabama, because he said the only reason he didn't go to Alabama was because it was a poor education, and that's Kayvon Thibodeau. Joe, can I say I saw Thibodeau in person when Auburn played Oregon in 2019, and I know he was a true freshman, but as much as I heard about this guy, I didn't really see him do a whole lot in that game. And I've always felt like he was highly overrated. It was like people wanted him to be good because he was the number one overall recruit in his class. So if you're the number one overall recruit in your class, you have to be this good, which I remember Auburn one year had the number one overall recruit in their class. He ended up doing nothing at Auburn and transferring to Florida. It doesn't mean that you're that great. And I kind of think that Thibodeau might be one of the most overrated players in this draft.
I can take him at 7 if I'm the Giants because you've already had a top 10 pick. I feel like that gives you a little bit more of a luxury to take the gamble because I do think there's an incredible potential of upside with Thibodeau. So I am okay with that pick.
Yeah. I think there's definitely potential for upside, but in terms of what I've seen, I haven't really seen it.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think you already having had a top 10 pick before that makes this a much more palatable pick. But if this was my only pick that I had in the top 10, there's no way I'd be going Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, I'd be nervous.
Okay. All right, Joe. At number 8, this one, so far I feel like I've disagreed with this guy just about everything. This is the worst one yet, though. So the Atlanta Falcons at number 8, he has them taking Drake London, the USC wide receiver. Joe, I understand that the Calvin Ridley suspension is there right now, but if there's one thing the Falcons have in spades, it's wide receivers. I mean, they're loaded at the wide receiver position. They have been for the last 5 years, yet they continually go out and draft wide receivers early. And I don't understand it. And if they did this, this would be just another grave injustice to their team that is fine at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted Kyle Pitts last year in the top 5, and everybody was kind of excused that, saying, he was such a can't-miss prospect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this would be the second year they would have kind of done that if they go after London. But I'm not even sure London's the best receiver in this class, and I don't think it's, a position of just need, like you said, with the Falcons. So, yeah, I would not agree with that pick.
Joe, if I were the Falcons, I'd be going offensive line, and offensive line. And if you didn't think that there was a player right here that warranted an 8th overall pick, trade this pick. Seriously, because, I mean, you haven't moved on from – did they move on from that, Ryan?
Yeah, they traded him to the Colts.
Okay, who do they end up getting?
Their starter is going to be Marcus Mariota next year.
All right, well, Marcus Mariota still has a lot of injury problems. You need to protect your starting quarterback right now. And you have plenty of receivers. I mean, even though you're not going to have Calvin Ridley for, I think, is it an 8-game suspension?
I think it may be an entire season.
An entire season. It's a lot. You may be missing out Ridley for that much. You don't have Julio anymore, but you still have Russell Gage. You still have a good tight end. I still think they have a, probably an upper level wide receiver room. I think this would be a very terrible pick if they did this.
I think so.
And that's not anything against Drake London. This is against any wide receiver they picked. I wouldn't care which one they went out and got. I think this would be a very poor pick.
Right.
And that fits in with the way I've thought about what this guy said on everything so far. All right, Joe, let's go to number 9 in the Seattle Seahawks. This was an interesting one right here. This is a guy who 2 years ago, I would have said, man, you're getting him at 9. That's a steal of a deal. But with what I've seen with his attitude, doesn't seem like he's much of a team first player, and how he kind of gave up on his team the last couple of years, it'd be hard for me to want to invest a lot of money in this guy. And I'm talking about Derek Stingley of LSU. Derek Stingley, as a true freshman, he was one of the unsung heroes of that national championship team. He really was. I mean, in probably one of their more hard-fought games against Auburn, he made an amazing interception at the end of the first half that really, might have been one of the plays of the game. He completely locked down Seth Williams in that game at the time when Seth Williams was playing his best football of his career. And he did it consistently against a lot of other really good wide receivers. When he played Alabama, he did it. But then the next year when Joe Burrow was gone, when Jamar Chase, opted out, when all of these players that brought LSU to what's arguably the greatest teams ever as national championship, and suddenly Derek Stingley was the star, he shot away from the limelight. And by that, I mean, when they lost a couple of games, he quit on his team. He opted out of the rest of the season. And then the next year, he kind of had a little bit of what I saw with Leonard Fournette, where I felt like he kind of faked injuries a little bit. Didn't really seem like he cared enough about his team to play there. And in my mind, I know he's an incredible talent. I know he's a lockdown corner. But do you want somebody that shows that level of care about his team and that much of a commitment to the locker room? I wouldn't at number 9.
Yeah, I wouldn't take him either for 2 reasons. One, you think about this issue of lack of commitment. Like, that's a big thing right now in sports. They're talking about right now with the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, some of the issues they're having, just staying on the court, wanting to play, motivation. And I just think this issue and concept of load management that we see in sports, you don't want a player that you're going to think is going to quit on your team, especially in the top 10. So I would definitely want to stay away from that. And then second, as I referenced earlier, I'm just not a proponent of taking defensive backs, really even this high. If you're the Seahawks, you're really hitting a total rebuild now that Russell Wilson's been traded. And so I'm really looking at more foundational pieces here.
Absolutely. I mean, I know the Seahawks are a team that generally has been a defensive branded team. Even though Pete Carroll is more of an offensive guy, they've been more of a defensive centric team. I'm with you. I don't like picking cornerbacks in the top 10. And Derek Stingley is actually 2 years ago would have been an exception to that. I may have actually been okay with that move for a different team. But the way that I've seen Derek Stingley morph into a player that I just frankly don't have a whole lot of love or respect for, it makes him hard as a palpable pick for anybody in the top 10 right now to me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If I were them, I definitely would look at defensive line, offensive line. Maybe even a wide receiver wouldn't be a bad pick to pair with DK Metcalf right now. I don't like Derek Stingley at this position. All right, Joe, at number 10, the Jets have another pick. And if this pick goes the way that he says he is, there's gonna be a lot of fans that are very angry in New York about them going with another defensive player in the top 10 when their offense is truly atrocious and they have a quarterback who's treading water back there. He has Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end from Florida State, going to the Jets right here with their second number 10 pick, with their second first-round pick.
Yeah, I don't know much about Johnson. It seems like, there are more noteworthy prospects that I've been hearing about in the top 15 that a lot of other people are higher on that you could go here if you're the Jets. But it just hit me, though, on another kind of stunning level that have we even heard Trayvon Walker's name been called yet? Yet, he's been floated around as the number 1 pick.
Yeah, he picked Trayvon Walker to go number 1 to the Jags.
Okay, that's right. I completely, for some reason, I got him confused with Hutchinson for a second. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. I'll be honest, Joe. Probably not just me, but I didn't watch a whole lot of Florida State football because they've been bad